The Olympic Games are a significant multi-sport international event. Both the Summer and Winter Games have been the subject of numerous scandals, controversies, and illicit drug usage throughout its history. Over the course of its 29 editions, incidents of fraud, competitive disputes, and even political killings have tarnished the Olympics' purity. Here are some of the most infamous controversies in the history of the Games. This is Top 10 Biggest Scandals in Olympics. But hey, before going on with this video, hit that subscribe button to watch more videos like this one. Now, let's get going. In 1912, America's original loses his Olympic double. Jim Thorpe, the first Native American to win an Olympic gold medal, was a jack of all crafts, as evidenced by his gold medal triumphs in the pentathlon and decathlon events at the 1912 Stockholm Games. Thorpe, however, was stripped of his medals after it was discovered he had played professional baseball before the Olympics, which was a violation of the Games' amateurism regulations at the time. Thorpe died in 1953, and the IOC restored his gold medals 30 years later, claiming that no objection against Thorpe's presence at the 1912 Olympics was lodged within 30 days after the Games. In 1932, Paavo Nurmi was barred from competing. Paavo Nurmi was a world-class middle to long-distance runner in the 1920s, establishing 6 world records and earning 9 gold medals while representing Finland. Nurmi was banned by Swedish officials led by Sigfrid Edstorm once he was deemed a professional athlete. Nurmi, according to Edstorm, was compensated excessively for travel costs. Nurmi hoped against all odds that the prohibition would be lifted, while every other marathon participant begged with organizers to allow him to run the event. He showed up at the Olympic Village in Los Angeles and kept training. Nurmi was ultimately denied the right to run, resulting in long-term animosity between Finland and Sweden. Nurmi, on the other hand, had the final laugh when he ignited the torch at the Helsinki Summer Olympics in 1952. In 2008, the U.S. women's gymnastic team accused the Chinese team of cheating. In 2008, the Chinese women's gymnastics team won the overall gold medal, and the Americans instantly speculated that some of the Chinese team's competitors were too young to participate. One of the girls even had what seemed to be a missing baby tooth, if you recall. Due to a disagreement between the online sports resignation list and the International Gymnastics Organization, a consensus could not be reached on whether the Chinese team was obeying the regulations, according to the New York Times. The Huffington Post scheduled a post that appeared to be damaging enough, but the IGF never took anything, thus the scandal remains unresolved. Neither party was pleased with the situation. The Americans clearly believed they had been denied a gold medal, while the Chinese team was enraged by the charges. In 1976, Boris Onyshenko cheated in the pentathlon. Cheaters are doomed to fail. Boris Onyshenko was discovered using an épée, which is a fancy name for a fencing blade, which was fitted with an electrical system that earned points for him even if he didn't hit his opponent. According to The Guardian, the British squad suspected Onyshenko following his match with Adrian Parker. The judges were forced to inspect Onyshenko's épée after his next opponent, Jim Fox, complained to the judges that Onyshenko was scoring without striking him. Of course, they discovered he was cheating, and Onyshenko was dubbed Boris the Cheat for the rest of his life. In 1956, there was a match called Blood in the Water. When the 1956 Summer Olympics were held in Melbourne, Australia, the Soviet Union and Hungary were embroiled in a tense political situation, since the Soviets had invaded Hungary after they rebelled earlier in 1956. According to Smithsonian.com, the Hungarian water polo team had been restless during the Olympic Games, concerned about their family back home, and things got out of hand when they squared off against the Soviets. To begin with, the Hungarian captain declined to shake the Soviet captain's hand at the start of the game, which is a usual sportsmanlike gesture. From then, things just got worse. In the pool, the players began fighting ferociously, with several of them being bloodied in the process. The game had to be called off due to the referee's concern of inciting a genuine riot, and the event has since been dubbed the Blood in the Water match. In 1988, Ark Si-hun defeats Roy Jones Jr. Seoul, Korea hosted the 1988 Summer Olympics. Roy Jones Jr. had battled against his South Korean boxer, Park Si-hun, during those games and surpassed him in every manner imaginable, except when it counted most. Despite Jones landing 86 punches to Park's 32, the verdict was 3-2 in Park's favor. I told Sports Illustrated afterwards, one of the judges told The Guardian, it was a horrible situation. The American won easily. In fact, I was confident that my 4 other judges would score the battle heavily in favor of the American. So I voted for the Korean to keep the score at 4-1 for the Americans and save the host country any embarrassment. Right, that is entirely reasonable. Jones was never given an explanation for this heinous crime, but his professional career has more than made up for it. Bribery in Salt Lake City, 2002. We'll have a scandal the second you bring in the bribes. And despite, or because, of the city's authorities/representatives from the games paying off IOC officials, Salt Lake City, the Mormon metropolis of the United States, was awarded the 2002 Winter Games. We're talking about ski vacations, Super Bowl tickets, and bribes in cash. The city had previously failed to earn the games 4 times, thus the only way to avoid failure was to buy off the organizers. The inquiry was taken on a global scale. It was later found that IOC officials were also on the take for prior tournaments. New rules were implemented, and while no one was prosecuted, several individuals lost their jobs as a result. It was one of the most humiliating moments in IOC history. The infamous French judge known as Fragile, 2002. You know the problem is transcendent when your whole scoring system has to be rebuilt. It all came down to a fragile French judge. In free skating, Canadians Jamie Sallee and David Pelletier were obviously superior to Russians Elena Bereznaya and Anton Sergalita on the rink, although Marie-Reine Lagone ranked the two in reverse. She ultimately had a tearful breakdown in a hotel lobby, claiming she was part of a complex scheme to award the Russians gold in one event, free skating, and the French gold in another, ice dancing. For those of us who don't care about figure skating, it was the first spark of interest in the sport since another predicted controversy on this list, which you'll see shortly. The juicing of Marion Jones, 2000. Jones was one of the most renowned American track athletes of all time, won 5 gold medals in the 2000 Olympics, but her reputation was trampled in the years after she was exposed and tearfully acknowledged to her cheating. More than 7 years later, in 2007, she finally admitted it. Jones had a lot of backers for a long time. That's because she'd been insistent for so long that she wasn't a cheater. Victor Conte's insistence on giving Jones medications prior to and during the 2000 Olympics eventually brought the track star down. On top of that, she was found guilty of perjury. She is the most recent and perhaps the most famous American Olympian to be linked to doping. Juicing by Ben Johnson, 1988. That scumbag Canadian. At the 1988 Olympics, Johnson beat Carl Lewis in the 100-meter dash, which meant Lewis couldn't defend his title as the fastest man in the world. Oh, how things changed in such a short period of time. Johnson's world record run of 9.79 seconds was shattered after he tested positive for steroids, specifically after a steroid called stanozolol, which is all too appropriate given that Americans were LOLing all over themselves after the arrogant Johnson had to rescind his achievements, giving Lewis the gold after all. What do you think of these Olympic scandals and mishaps? Also, what do you think of today's video? Feel free to comment down below your thoughts on the Austin versus Bryce fight. We love hearing your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe too. See ya in the next video.